Hence, I remind you to rekindle the gift of God that is within you. 2 Timothy 1:6. Greetings in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and welcome to our Rekindle Sisterships in Mission event. I'm Deepika Srivastava, Director for Church Relations at the Vellore Christian Medical College CMC Foundation and Deacon at Bethany Memorial Reformed Church in New York City. I'm so excited to celebrate with you the season of Advent and the gift of God's compassion for and through us. The same compassion that led Dr. Ida Sophia Scudder, sent as a medical missionary through the Reformed Church in America more than 100 years ago to establish the Christian Medical College and Hospital in Vellore, South India, a hospital renowned worldwide for excellence in education, research, and compassionate care, bringing physical and spiritual healing to more than 2 million of the poorest of poor every year. The Foundation's relationship with the RCA has evolved through the years and by divine intervention, rekindled in 2018 with our introduction to Reverend J.P. Sundararajan, who is now a member of the Foundation board. In addition, I had the opportunity to speak at the Women's Transformation and Leadership Rekindle in-person event in March 2019. More recently, we have been honored by Reverend Liz Testa's participation in our virtual prayer and lecture events. We experience the joy of sistership as God's Holy Spirit calls and unites us to collaborate on what God is doing in our lives locally and globally. Please feel free to greet each other via chat with your name, where you're from, and a word of praise or hope for this evening. As we celebrate Ida Scudder's birthday and the importance of women's role in faith and medicine, we will start with Aunt Ida's favorite hymn, Be Thou My Vision, performed by the faculty and students at CMC.
Thank you. Is Deepika with us? I'm going to step in for her right now. So just 1 second, please. Good evening, sisters. So wonderful to be together. Just 1 second. Our sister Deepika was going to pray.
She's with us now.
She's with us now. Wonderful, Deepika. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, lost connectivity there. So the last lines of that hymn was, High King of Heaven, my treasure thou art, beautiful words of life. Let us give this evening to God in prayer through a beautiful prayer written by Dr. Ida Scudder. Father, whose life is within me and whose love is ever about me, grant that thy life may be maintained in my life today and every day, that with gladness of heart, without haste or confusion of thought, I may go about my daily tasks, conscious of my ability to meet every rightful demand, seeing the larger meaning of little things and finding beauty and love everywhere. In the sense of thy presence, may I walk through the hours, breathing the atmosphere of love rather than anxious striving. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Deepika. And you just helped us exhale from our little moment of anxiety about the technology. Thank you for that, sister. So welcome, welcome, sisters, to our Rekindle Advent virtual event. I know there's so many of you who are on this event platform tonight who meet with us regularly, and then there are others who are with us occasionally, and then there are yet others who are new this evening. And so we just welcome everyone, whether you're here in North America, where it may be evening into night, it may be afternoon into evening, and then we also have sisters with us from around the world for whom it is early morning. So wherever you are in the world and whatever time it is, welcome, welcome. And please, as our sister Deepika invited you at the beginning, do drop your names into the chat along with your location and a word of hope of what you're feeling tonight. And so just to say, again, this is such a wonderful opportunity for us to gather from the North and the South and the East and the West to celebrate our sisterships in mission particularly. And in this Advent season where we look to Mary and Elizabeth, that dynamic duo of Advent, who with the Holy Spirit moving between them, were able to call out each other's gifts and what the Lord was doing within each of them. We have that opportunity tonight to lift up and celebrate women in the field of medicine and the ways that God's Spirit has spurred them on. So of course, our foundation for this in the Reformed Church in America, our mother in this mission is Dr. Ida Sophia Scudder. Today is her 150th birthday. So we have this wonderful feeling of celebration for her birthday. And then also we are here to celebrate women in the field of medicine. So if you are a woman in the field of medicine, please wave to us or use your what are they called? The little icons there. Feel free to use those or drop your name into the chat and what your field of medicine is. But know that we are celebrating you along with all women in the field of medicine, and particularly the women who are yet still serving in Vellore, India, in the hospital and studying at the medical college that Dr. Ida Scudder started over 100 years ago. And so, sisters, we are grateful for the partnership that we have for this event tonight with RCA Global Mission, along with RCA Women's Transformation and Leadership, and our wonderful friends at the Vellore Christian Medical College Foundation. So this is a partnership amongst the three of us, and we give God thanks for that. Of course, The RCA women have a great history with global missions, having started at Marble Collegiate Church in their hoop skirts in 1875. That was the first meeting of the what was then called the Women's Board of Foreign Missions. So we are living into that legacy yet today, and we're so delighted to be here. One of the things that we're here tonight to learn more about and to see how God is calling us to contribute to is this Jawadi Hills Maternity Hospital. The RCA and the CMC Foundation have been working together for the last 2 years to support this effort for a maternity and pediatric hospital. Dr. Anu Rose is with us. She's the director there, and will tell us more about this later. But to date, $440,000 of the $500,000 that's necessary to get this started has been raised. So our good friends at the foundation are seeing what can happen. How will God help inspire the rest of us to help contribute to that $60,000 that's left? And they would like to have that accomplished by year's end. So do not get alarmed. We are not being expected to raise $60,000 tonight. We have our widow's mite that we might be able to contribute to be able to help get to that goal by December 31st. So this evening will help us do that. And so whatever you can do to support it, whether it's with an offering, financial offering, whether it's with your prayers, it will be a wonderful blessing. And so that is, again, as I said before, Dr. Anu Rose is with us, and this is such a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to hear directly from her. It is very early in the morning for her right now, and so we're extra blessed and grateful that she's able to be with us tonight. So yes, I see that we've got some folks saying that they're in the medical field in the chat, so just know we're grateful to hear from you, and we celebrate you. So just to say, yes, that we're celebrating Dr. Ida's 151st birthday. She's had such an influence on so many people. You'll hear 2 of those stories tonight, living, breathing testimonies of the influence that she's had, and then the way that new leaders have risen up. We saw in that beautiful hymn recording some of the medical faculty and students at Velour Christian Medical College, so we can have that image in our heads of what that looks like there if we've not had a chance to be there ourselves. So one of just something that we want to share with you quickly is that Women's Transformation and Leadership, as you know, those of you who have been with us, we celebrate our legacy of leadership. We celebrate the mothers who have gone before us, the aunties who have gone before us. And so we have the Legacy of Leadership booklet that we've published. Dr. Ida Scudder is in there. We just want to call your attention to it if you are interested in learning more about the history of women in the RCA and sharing that with your congregation, with your women's ministries. Please feel free to do that. You can order it now from the RCA store. So feel free to do that. There's also a free download if you'd like that as well. So feel free to enjoy that resource. And then what would a birthday celebration be without some fun activities and fun giveaways? So we're going to have our first She Is Called t-shirt giveaway right now before we move into our time of learning from Dr. Ramya Rahman. And so Lorraine, do you have our slide to show our She Is Called t-shirts? This is all about women living into their gifts and callings. And we have a wonderful t-shirt, She Is Called t-shirt, various ones that have biblical women and me on them. So throughout the night, we're going to be giving out a few of these. There you can see, some of you will see yourselves in these photos. We have photos from our Mission 2020 event that was right before COVID in January of 2020. And then our General Synod that just happened in Tucson, Arizona is there on the screen for you, as well as this little miss in Brooklyn. Do you love her? She's got such an attitude, Miss Stewart. So we're going to have a question. Later on, we're going to spin a wheel to see who's going to win. But for right now, we just want to see, since today is Dr. Scudder's birthday, we are wondering if there's anyone else that's in this Zoom gathering tonight who has a birthday on December 9th. If you are she, would you please make yourself known to us? You can unmute and say it is your birthday. Do we have any birthdays from tonight? Birthdays. A little birdie told me there was a birthday. And I want to say now I'm looking through everybody and I see that we do have a gentleman with us, Pastor Abraham. Welcome, brother. Yes, birthday. Do we have a birthday today, December 9th?
Yes, it's my birthday.
Yay! Can you say who you are and where you're from?
Vanny Manicum from New York City, and a big fan of this event, so overjoyed. It's a wonderful gift.
God bless you, and a happy birthday. Right, sisters? Happy birthday to our sister Vini. Wonderful. So Lorraine Parker will be in touch with you soon to let she'll make sure follow up with you so you can choose the shirt that you'd like, and she will mail that off to you. Happy birthday. Anybody else? Very good. All righty. We're gonna move into our time of learning now. So I'll turn it over to my dear colleague, Leslie.
Thanks, Liz. And greetings, everybody. It's just so wonderful to see you all this beautiful Advent evening. As Liz said, we are going to move into a time of learning with our first guest speaker, Dr. Ramya Rahman. Before she shares her presentation, I did want you to know that we will have time, hopefully at the end of her presentation, for some questions or comments. So as you feel called, as she's presenting, I invite you to share any questions or thoughts in the chat. I'll be monitoring it during a presentation. And then at the end, I will share with Dr. Rahman some of the questions that have come up, and she will hopefully have time to answer them. So please don't be shy, reflect, ask questions. So let me introduce you to Dr. Ramya Rahman. It's a delight to have her with us. She is the general practitioner in Perth, Western Australia. So it is a very different time than we have here. And her specific interests are in women's and children's health, particularly on perinatal health and well-being. She's passionate about the provision of high quality clinical care and believes that training and education are essential to this development. And so to support that, Dr. Rahman is a medical educator at the Western Australian General Practice Education and Training, and is a senior lecturer at the School of Medicine at the University of Notre Dame in Fremantle. She's also the deputy chair of the Royal Australia College of General Practitioners Western Australian Council, lots of words, which seem very impressive. And in 2020, she was awarded the City of Fremantle Aspire Award, recognizing her work on postnatal recovery at the World Organization of Family Doctors. And finally, because she does not have enough to do, she is the host of a medical talk show that airs on ABC Radio nightly. And I'd love to learn if we could listen in. So maybe she'll share that in the chat after she speaks. But please welcome Dr. Rahman. We're just so delighted to have you.
Leslie, what a welcome. Thank you so much. And firstly, Reverend Testa, John, as well as the CMC Foundation and the rest of the team, thank you so much for having me here today. It's an absolute delight, and what an honor to be presenting this, particularly on Dr. Ida Scudder's birthday and Vani's birthday on that note. So I've wished her a very happy birthday, Vani. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. So before further ado, I think John did mention that this was about 20 minutes with a little bit of question time. I'm more than happy to be interrupted as we sort of go through, share my story. I'm here to share my story. So I'll get started. I'm just going to share my screen. You should be able to see my screen there. All right. So firstly, Dr. Ida Scudder has had a huge impact in where I am today, who I've sort of become, and also in terms of some of my passions and also some of the values that I've sort of heard. And that's sort of the story that I would really like to share. As Leslie had mentioned, I am a general practitioner. I currently practice in Perth in Western Australia. But I grew up in Orange, which is a small country town in New South Wales on the east coast of Australia. And I moved to Perth for medical school more than a decade ago now, and qualified as did my further specialisation in general practice here, and endeavoured into various activities, including media. So radio has been a new thing over the last 1 year, taken up as a hobby lately more than anything else. Seems to keep me entertained. I'd like to share with you today regarding women in leadership. It's not an easy sort of road to get into leadership positions for anyone. It doesn't really matter, but there's a lot of words that sort of come to my mind, including resilience and a sense of determination that sort of works in there. But there are a lot of people who influence us in that process. So given the time limitation that we do have, I'd like you to just take about 30 seconds, and you feel free to drop it into the chat box if you can, but we might not be able to spend too much time. I'd like you to just reflect. I'd like you to think about leaders who you admire and throw some names out, or just think about it, and that's completely fine. They could be leaders from social justice to social change, new thinking. People have shown courage in the process. And the reason I'm getting you to think about this is I'd like you to sort of reflect and think about how they've influenced you, and why would you consider them to be a leader? What are some of these characteristics that you hold very highly in these people? I'll give you about 30 seconds and then we'll sort of carry on. As I mentioned, feel free to drop it into the chat box, but otherwise happy for you to just have a think about it. So I might move on, and I hope everyone's had a bit of an opportunity, because I always tend to start with a reflective piece when I tend to present. It gets me thinking. I'm going to share a little bit of a personal story about myself, just to give you a little bit of an idea of how Dr. Scudder has had an influence in the way of my thinking, and why I hold Dr. Scudder to be the most inspirational aspect in the way that I practice medicine. So I'm a second generation Australian. I was born in India. And my parents migrated to Orange in New South Wales, which is a country town, when I was about 5 or 6 years of age. And I grew up in the country in New South Wales. Quite a change, I must say, because I did start attending primary school in India before moving here. And I think this was the time that I sort of learned very quickly what it means to be different. Different in various ways. Difference because of my skin tone, difference because of my cultural background, difference because of the way I dressed, or maybe even attitudes, what I took for lunch, maybe, potentially, reflectively. These are things that we sort of don't realize at the time. And, often I've also thought about the fact that maybe my parents were different from everyone else as well. So in terms of whether it was the way my mum dressed, when she used to drop me off at school. All of these things tend to play a role in who we are. And we make a lot of judgments in the processes when we actually look at someone initially. These are not things that came to my mind when I was in school, but these have sort of grown on me over a period of time as I've sort of progressed, becoming an adult and coming into a certain level of responsibilities. School was quite a testing phase for me, quite a challenge. Primary school, I think more than primary school, probably high school was even more challenging. And it was challenging because I was different, and you try to sort of find a sort of a zone to go, where do I fit in? How do I fit in? And you probably have noticed that over a period of time, I've picked up quite a strong Aussie accent. So it's something that sort of grows on you over a period of time. But that initial transition phase is a very, very challenging time. Interestingly, this is my accent now. I don't think I have another accent per se, but that's because I identify myself now as a second generation Australian. So all of these things really have a huge impact, and school was testing because of all of these times. And that was probably the hardest part of my sort of growing up time. My self-confidence was absolutely rock bottom. Worked through lots of cultural differences and challenges. It tested my patience, acceptance, and really built a lot of resilience. And I have to say, continuing to build quite a deal of resilience as we sort of transition through. It was in year 9, and the single subject that I was good at was biology. I'm terrible at maths. My husband still goes on about it. He's a pilot, so he seems to be quite good in mathematics and physics, which is a good thing since he flies planes. But nevertheless, mathematics was never my strong point. And I thought at that time, you know, medicine might be a really good career, a really fun career, because I think it would give me the opportunity to engage with people whilst pursuing my passion in science and biology. I mentioned this to one of my teachers, my school teachers, and I don't know why I picked this teacher. It was my mathematics teacher, bad choice at the time, believe it or not. But he responded with, Ramya, I'm not quite sure you're really a very good fit for this. I suggest you think of something a little bit more easier, something that would match your IQ. You've got to be the cream to be choosing medicine as a career. Now, this was in the 90s. It's not really that far away. But I think it was quite demoralizing, as you can imagine. I don't think I would need to explain how bad I would have felt. There was a lot of moaning around at home that I did, and sort of, you know, refusing to get to school. But eventually, my mum and dad, you know, sort of went, okay, this is out of control. We need to do something about it. And they've always been and continue to be a huge value of moral support to me. And they haven't been able to join in tonight, but I talk about this all the time, and Benny and John have heard this before as well. But it is at that point that Dad caught hold of me and he went, you know what, listen to me. And he handed me this book that I've got, you know, on the screen here. And I have to say, this is the book that I read eventually. But can you imagine, to a 15-year-old, when a book that's quite old handed over to me wasn't the most appealing thing initially. So I did put it aside for quite some time. But something came over me and I did pick up the book and I read it. I read the whole thing. I've read it several times, but I did read it. And it is what has absolutely changed the way I think, I feel, and eventually has absolutely impacted in building the confidence that I hold today. It's completely changed my thinking. Ida Sophia Scudder. Dr. Scudder, as you know, is the founder of the Christian Medical College and Hospital in Vellore in India. And as a third-generation American medical missionary, she came to India with her family. And in the late 1890s, she witnessed the death of 3 women during childbirth. Due to customs and cultural differences, the husbands of these women said they were not going to accept any help from a male medical practitioner, that is being her father. Unfortunately, they died during childbirth. And this is when she realized that women were needed for women in medicine. This was her determination to enter medicine, and she was one of the first women graduates of Wales Medical College of Cornell University in New York. She then returned to Vellore, as you know, to build a fabulous concept, the hospital, and more importantly, she opened a medical school for women in India. As you can imagine, this was the time that women didn't have rights to vote. So, you know, that this determination is absolutely unbelievable. Today, Vellore Medical College has grown to be a world pioneering service, teaching and research that we all know about. And Dr. Scudder's story is an absolute inspiration to me. She lived in an era where women's activist groups were fighting for equality. I went to Vellore when I was in year 10, and my mind was set on medicine. It was medicine or nothing. It was a passion, experiences, and our role models. It is what actually builds us to who we are today. So fast forwarding many years ahead, women in medicine and medical leadership today. Where are we today in 2021? In Australia, for many decades, women have attained gender parity in gaining admission to medical school. But there is still a lot of underrepresentation of women in senior leadership positions, which persists in Australia as well as worldwide. In Australia, around 30% of deans, chief medical officers, and medical college boards and committee members are women, while women only make up 12.5% of CEOs in large hospitals. In 2019, The Lancet dedicated an entire issue on advancing women in science, medicine, and global health to highlight the issue on hand. These disparities are actually much greater for women of colour, women of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, here in Australia, and women with disabilities. We have made progress in equality, but there's a lot more work for us to be done. One of the key things is unconscious gender bias, which still contributes to what we call a glass ceiling effect, or unspoken barriers to career progression, which unfortunately still prevails today, despite increased qualifications, employability, and work performances among women. I'm going to use an example, and this actually happened last evening, which I quickly thought about it this morning, and I'm going to use this example. As Leslie had mentioned, I was the Deputy Chair of the Royal College of GPs in WA, and I've just recently taken over as the Chair for the Royal College of GPs here in WA. And it's only been about 2.5 weeks, and quite an insightful job, learning still, very steep learning curve. But I attended an event last evening. As you know, it's coming up to Christmas, so a lot of end of year events and networking events that are coming up. And it was the Australian Medical Association had a networking event last evening. And I was there and I was speaking with the Director General of Health for Western Australia, because John and I were talking about this earlier, about transitioning through COVID and living with COVID in WA, like what are our plans for 2022. A colleague of mine was just standing next to me, and this colleague is known to me from other sort of avenues and associations. And after sort of finishing up that conversation, he said to me, "I really like your style. I really think that you've got a very collaborative approach in leadership, which is great." And he said, "Sometimes a woman's leadership style is what we need. This collaborative approach with soft skills. But remember, you'll need us when you need to speak to government, as you need to have the ability to push through some ideas that may not work with this sort of approach." I was enlightened last evening, and I thought 2021, and I'm giving a talk tomorrow morning about women in leadership. It hasn't fazed me, but it has given me a lot of thought to go how much work we still have to do. I think we have to be really appreciative of gender differences. And I'm not suggesting that men and women are any different in their leadership styles. All I am asking is to say that men and women can have a collaborative approach and a very firm approach when needed. I don't think I would need to call upon my male colleagues to have a very firm approach while I sort of excel in my soft skills, as well as, sort of collaborative approaches. These are skills that we learn. These are not skills that we are born with. And I am no expert on it. I am learning. And the last 2.5 weeks have been very tough. They've been a very steep learning curve. But I think this is where we build resilience. These experiences is what really builds us resilience. And we go, well, fine, that's okay. But this is what makes me go, I can do it. You know what, just because of that, I am going to do it. I will learn that skill to be able to do it. And I really do hope that using my examples of what I'm experiencing today, not talking 10 years ago, today, it will give a little bit of a thought-provoking process for everyone to be on the same page. But this is unconscious gender bias. We need to have a level of self-awareness. I will be seeing this colleague, and I've got nothing towards them, but I just think that, more needs to be done to become self-aware of it. Diversity. Diversity is a term that's gained quite a lot of traction recently. I see it a lot in conversations and media. Diversity, or sometimes the lack of it in senior leadership, has been in the spotlight. So what do we mean by diversity? It's about empowering people by respecting and appreciating what makes them different in terms of age, gender, religion, disability, sexual orientation, education, national origin. Each individual or organisation brings with them a diverse set of perspectives, work and life experiences, as well as religious and cultural differences. Workforce, including senior medical positions, includes a mix of gender, races, and other types of diverse candidates. But as we go up the leadership ladder, it can become increasingly homogenous. And I found that because I was in a room of very senior men yesterday. And I'm not a very big person. I know you can't see me on Zoom, but I look, as some people would say, a high school student. But these are all judgments that we make. We pass judgments as soon as we see someone. And to be honest with you, this is not just for men. This is also for women. This is for all of us. You know, as human beings, we hold a sense of lens in front of our eyes as we walk in and see someone. And I think having that self-awareness makes a lot of a difference. Many European countries have imposed gender quotas requiring at least 40% of a company's board to be women. New Zealand and Australia have imposed disclosure requirements of gender diversity on company boards. But the trouble is when this is regarded as a tick boxing exercise, you know, I've got to get a woman on the board because I've got to tick a box to make sure that we've got adequate gender parity. Token appointments are made on boards. And these can be troublesome. They can be troublesome, the token appointments, because firstly, they undermine the idea that bringing equality to corporate boards is unsuitable or unqualified women are appointed as directors. Tokenistic appointments of underqualified women reinforce the notion that there is not enough qualified women for the job. Second reason is token appointments to corporate boards undermine the benefit of diversity for governance, which is a really important concept for board. Gender, race, age, experience, and other forms of diversity bring various perspectives to the table, allowing better informed board decisions. But something for us to think about when we are in board positions and appointing people. Have I experienced this? Of course I have, definitely. I hold leadership roles, as you have just heard from me today, and the concept of unconscious gender bias seems to sort of trigger it. I was elected onto the WA Faculty Council here for the Royal College about 3 years ago. I went in for the first meeting and I sat down and a gentleman next to me said, "You must have gotten here today because we had to meet the gender quota, the token appointment." What he did forget is that I was elected onto the board. It was a very passing comment. There's a difference between an appointment and an election. It's really quite disappointing that someone could think that I was there by sheer luck and not by capability. Barriers to women in medical leadership. So gender equality has moved from a battle between genders and deliberate exclusion of women from leadership to a recognition that there is a need for all actively championing change, irrespective of gender. Barriers to female leadership falls under three main themes. And these themes were highlighted by Professor Helena Teed, who is one of the academic partners and health science professors from Melbourne, from Monash Health. She mentioned some of the barriers to female leadership falls under capacity, capability, and credibility. She calls them the 3 Cs. So what does that mean? Capacity, limitation due to additional household and parenting duties disproportionately shared by women. The Australian Medical Force data shows women work equal hours initially, but then there's a sharp decline corresponding to maternity leave and early preschool years, but then they tend to rise up again to men after a few years. But there still seems to be a lot more work that women are doing both outside the home and on the inside. We need to be able to empower and support women to seek more flexible, equitable balances for outside of work and parenting. So that's capacity. Capability. Perceived capability or confidence of women may hold in their ability to lead. Women are less likely to advocate for or promote themselves, with less nominations for awards or less, actively seeking pay rises or career opportunities. Just think about this. How many times as women have we thought to ourselves, I don't really want to make a fuss about this. I'm happy this happened, but people just think I'm really up myself, really quite bossy. I'm just going to hold back. It's a very different perspective, but capability. We need to have the capacity to advocate for ourselves and to an extent, promote our capability. And the third thing is credibility, the perceived traits that are consistent with leadership. There persists a bias in leadership and organizational culture, linking traditional masculine styles and values to leadership credibility, which may reduce the motivation for women to seek or retain leadership positions. Classic example is what happened yesterday. I hold the soft collaborative skills, whereas my male colleague holds the sort of more masculine, very heavy, strong, in with the boots skills to speak with government. I came across an article that was published a couple of months ago, a survey done by British Medical Association, reporting that 9 in 10 female doctors have experienced sexism in the work in the UK. Survey showed that 91% of female doctors have experienced this, and only 4% of men felt that their clinical ability had been doubted or undervalued because of their gender, whereas 70% of women who responded to this survey said that it's because of their gender that they felt that their clinical ability was doubted. So where are we today in terms of perceived capabilities? Perceived capability is a real issue for women, and it is one that I've grappled or tried to grapple in trying to come to terms with. When I was a senior registrar in my general practice training, we had to interview for our jobs, as with any other job. Went to a practice, interviewed with a fellow general practitioner for about 45 minutes. It went on for quite some time. What are my interests? Why do I want to work there, etc. And towards the end of that interview, he said to me, "Do you have children? And are you planning on having children?" I said, "Well, he saw my ring." So I said, "No, we don't have kids, not yet. Kids are on the card, but it happens when it happens." And he then responded with, "We'll have to reconsider your application, because if we do hire you and you did fall pregnant, then we need to consider the economic viability of employing you in terms of this practice." I think you can imagine, after 45 minutes of wasting my time, that was absolutely redundant piece of interviewing that was done. And this was in 2016, not that far away. These are just some of the examples, my personal examples that I'm sharing with you. But there's a lot of things that we can do, and there are a lot of things we have done. So challenging negative thinking. 2020 has placed us all out of our comfort zones. The fact that we're in Zoom today, it's wonderful that we're able to connect online, but a face-to-face opportunity, they're much more restricted. What we used to take for granted in terms of travel is no longer happening at this time. But our growth has also made us more vulnerable. When the virus first emerged in Wuhan, China, so did racism targeting Chinese and Asian people in Australia and internationally. This includes racism towards doctors, as well as other health professionals in hospitals and Australians in their own home. It's times like this that our unconscious bias plays a role in our attitudes and behaviours. We assume things because of our race, religion, gender, culture, and cultural differences. Unconscious biases are social stereotypes about certain groups of people that individuals form outside of our conscious awareness. We all hold them, and often these biases stem from our tendency to organize the social worlds by categorizing. Gender also appears to influence the way in which seniority and clinical experience are perceived, both by patients and other doctors. Even if women demonstrate strength, ambition, and resilience, our daily battles with microaggressions, especially the expectations and assumptions formed by stereotypes and racism, often tend to push us down. Imposter syndrome is loosely defined as doubting your abilities and feeling like a fraud. It disproportionately affects high-achieving people who find it hard to accept their accomplishments. Do I hold imposter syndrome? Yes, I do. A lot of the time, my husband will point this out, and he sent me a text message the other day with something that he saw on LinkedIn, and he goes, "Stop doing whatever you're doing. You're only in the job for 2.5 weeks. You talk to a lot of people, but sometimes we need a reality check. We need people around us to enable that process." And I'm ever so grateful to my family for being there for me throughout this entire time, my husband as well as my parents, because they helped me keep in check about imposter syndrome. We're not devoid of it. We are all prone to it. But I think having an appreciation of it and having people who are supportive and who are able to encourage us in that process makes all the difference. This concept about, imposter phenomenon is quite important, and it's taken traction quite throughout the world. I'm sure all of you have heard about it quite a lot. Imposter syndrome sometimes has a concept that fails to capture this dynamic and puts an onus on women to deal with their own effects. Workplaces remain misdirected towards seeking individual solutions for issues and disproportionately caused by systems of discrimination and abuse of power. We need to create a culture for women and people of color that address the systemic bias and racism. How often do you hear, or how often do we hear, I'm not a leader, but there is always a but that follows. I'm not a leader, but I want to change things in my clinical practice. But I want to change things to improve the health. But I want to be more skilled in working in primary care. But I want to have a great deal to be able to pass on to others. Why not do it? Why do we have a but? That's self-doubt. We need to take that out. Why not make those changes in the space that you're passionate about? Power of mentoring is very, very powerful. It's a powerful tool. It helps us to break the highly masculine leadership styles. Having excellent mentors can help normalize imposter feelings, empirically challenge negative thinking, and deliberately counteract stereotype threat. The behavior we walk past is the behavior we accept. We need to challenge this, and it fosters a lot of growth and equality in the process. We need to encourage both men and women to see leadership as an opportunity to mentor, inspire, and support other people. We need leaders who have a combination of personal humility and professional will, who can understand cooperative leadership and inclusive leadership, who allow others to demonstrate their strengths, and who know that they can lead from the front and when to take a supportive role. And I really like this one. We need to have people around us who look out the window and not in the mirror. I have a lot of people around me, and I'm very grateful for that. And I would like to acknowledge them. As I've mentioned, my husband and my parents are number one on the list. But I've got a lot of other people, Dr. Stephen Longworth, Mr. Kim Goddard, Professor Janice Bell. These are all people who have stood by me and continue to stand by me in enabling this process. And I have to make a note that these are just not women. Mentoring is just not women for women. It is about gender equality in that process. And several of the people that I have mentioned are men in that group. I've taken up quite a bit of your time, so I would like to finish up with a quote that I'm very fond of from Dr. Ida Scudder. Do not always look for gratitude, for sometimes when you are most deserving, you will get the least. There will be disappointments. Your pet theory will be dashed to the ground. Your most painstaking, laborious work, unsuccessful. There will be cares, anxieties, failures, which are very common to a professional life. Face trials with a smile, with the head erect and a calm exterior. If you are fighting for the right and for a true principle, be calm and sure and keep on until you win. Thank you so much for your time.
Dr. Rahman, thank you so much. The things you shared are so inspiring and so relevant to all of us, whether we're in the medical field or not. The idea of gender bias, the idea of how we embrace diversity, the idea of breaking the imposter syndrome and supporting each other and finding mentors, and the resilience you talked about. There weren't any questions, but there were so many comments agreeing with you and understanding all that you were saying and how much it sort of lifted up and inspired us. I did want to just see if there were any questions in the chat. We have just like a moment, but if there's anyone that wanted to just ask a question, I'd love for Dr. Rahman to answer it. I'll give you a second to type away after those inspiring words. Okay. All right, well, here's a fun question then to sort of segue. With all that you do, what are some hobbies you enjoy? Ivana has asked.
Thank you, Devon. I get asked this question quite often, and people are quite surprised. I love watching TV. I'm a big fan of Netflix. Absolutely, Amazon, whatever, any good shows, let me know. I say this to everyone, including my patients. I just enjoy really watching a lot of movies, but I also enjoy cycling. my husband and I love to go out to actually travel, and which we're not able to do at the moment. He's very fond of flying. I'm not. I'm scared of heights, but that's still work in progress. We are working on that. So I still go on little short flights, and we're blessed in Australia. It's a very vast, big country. We have the ability to fly distances here in a small plane. But certainly, I'm very much a home bird for a lot of the things that I do with my family.
Wonderful, thank you. And there was just one question that I found very interesting from Barbara. What differences, if there are any, do you notice between mentorship from men versus women?
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. It's a very valid question, and I could probably talk about it for quite some time, but I'll keep it very brief. I think mentoring per se in itself, you just need to find people who hold similar values and attitudes as yourself, because sometimes I've picked a wrong mentor, and there's a lot of sort of demoralizing microaggression that can happen in the progress, which is very offsetting. You know, they think they're doing good, but they're sort of talking down to you rather than talking with you or encouraging you or guiding you. Mentoring is it's a relationship where there is a bit of guidance in that process. Difference between men and women, I find, particularly when I speak to some of my mentors who are women, they tend to focus more on imposter syndrome, and they tend to highlight some of the things as women we tend to sort of focus on and go, just be aware of it so that you're not exhibiting too much of that. Sometimes women, for women mentors are not ideal either. Unfortunately, I have found in some professional circumstances, it actually, unfortunately, works the other way around because they're not terribly impressed with where you are or where they would like to be. So some of their own insecurities tends to filter through. Men as mentors, again, attitudes and values are really important. They do need to match and need to be on the same level. But particularly with men, again, there is a tendency to overpower sometimes. But when the match is correct, like for example, Steve Longworth was my supervisor and continues to be my colleague and mentor now. There is no overpowering in that situation. It's an enabling process. And I find that having men as mentors do help because they're able to see what we as women are not able to see from the other side. So they're able to provide a different perspective to some of the gender hierarchy that tends to happen, particularly in medicine. I can't comment on other specialties, but they're able to really comment on it because they've seen it from a different perspective to what we have as women. So it actually does make a difference, but there can be pros and cons with both. So I'm not going to say that it's a blanket statement in any way. And like I said, both men and women, identifying someone who has the best attitudes and values that match with your own attitudes and values is the number one key, regardless of gender.
Thank you so much. And it goes back to the idea of the diversity of opinion and experiences to help you have this rich experience of mentorship as each one of us grows and expands as a leader. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Leslie, and Reverend Testa, all of the audience. You will have to forgive me that I'm not able to stay for the entire session today. I'm in clinical practice today, so I do have to shoot through to practice. So my sincere apologies, Dr. Rose, that I'm not able to stay for your talk, but really, if there is a recording, I will watch it over the weekend.
There will be. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Ramya, thank you so much. We're so grateful to you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks again. Thank you. Bye then.
Well, we'll move along, friends. What a beautiful and really thought-provoking presentation that we had from Dr. Ramya. So as we're moving forward, I just want to name that we've raised $100 so far for our Jawadi Hills project. That's beautiful. So let's see if we can double that before the next time that we have Caroline give us the tally. So I realized before I had not introduced myself and our team. So Women's Transformation and Leadership is made up of myself, Reverend Liz Testa, our administrative partner and anchor, Elder Lorraine Parker, and our resident spiritual director and specialist, Leslie Mazada. And we also are delighted to have on the meeting tonight with us one of our colleagues from our operations department, Caroline Loubert, who is making sure that all the donations come through well. So we are just, again, delighted to be with you all tonight. So another person who would be with us if he could be, but he's out traveling the world right now, is the Director of Global Missions, Reverend J.P. Sundararajan. And we have a video from him talking about Dr. Ida Scudder and the importance of adaptive leadership, which plays in so nicely to Dr. Ramya's conversation with us about leadership. So let's go to that video.
Innovation and adaptive leadership is embedded into who we are at RCA Global Mission. As you might imagine, mission particularly is innovative, and it demands that you be adaptive. Today, I'd like to introduce you to my hero of the faith, one of the RCA's own mission legends, a woman named Ida Scudder. Now, Ida Scudder is the picture-perfect example of someone who adapted in following her call to follow Jesus Christ in mission. She saw a need, and she innovated to find a solution, one that would go on to change the entire community that she set out to serve, and in the process, changed a nation. I want to tell you that story, but you know what's even better? I'm going to have Ida tell you her story.
One evening, I was sitting alone in my room, reading, when I heard steps on the veranda, and soon a knock. I went to the door and saw a Brahmin gentleman. I asked him if I could do anything for him. "Oh, yes, Amma," he said. "I so need your help. My wife is dying in childbirth, and Amma, she is such a lovely girl. I heard that you'd come to India, and I thought you could help her." But I replied, "I know nothing about childbirth, but my father is a doctor, and I can bring him. He can save your little wife." Almost in horror, he raised his hands, saying, "I could not take a man into my house. No man can look upon my wife. If you cannot come, she must die." He left, and I sat down at my desk, feeling desperate. After some time, I heard footsteps. I ran to the door, thinking that the Brahmin had returned. Instead, there stood a Mohammedan, and with the same request. He too turned away, repeating the same words, "Oh, she must die." I felt I could not bear it. And again I heard footsteps in the same evening. Similar requests came from a third man. There was no sleep for me that night. I could not forget those 3 young women dying in childbirth when I could not help them. By morning, my decision was made. I could go to America, study medicine, and return to India as a doctor to try to save the lives of those who needed me.
Wasn't that an amazing story? Ida's story is an inspiration for all of us to be adaptive in our call as we follow Christ in mission. Because following God, as you well know, isn't always a straight path. And it often involves morphing and adapting and changing to what the people we meet along the way need, and how God decides to use us wherever we find ourselves. So as you hear Ida's story, the question I would love for you to be reflecting on with me is, in your own ministry context, how are you seeing adaptive leadership and innovation taking shape?
Thanks to Reverend JP for that inspiring video and for encouraging us to think about adaptive leadership in our own lives. So we're going to move on now to another t-shirt giveaway as we celebrate Dr. Ida's birthday today. So Lorraine, can you pop up the fun spinner? Lorraine and I and Leslie are always looking for new fun things that we can do to enjoy. Are you ready there, Lorraine?
Yeah, hold on 1 second.
Okay. So we're always looking for new things to do on these Zoom events. And so we found something called flippity.net that teachers use. So she's going to go ahead and spin this and somebody's name's going to come up, but it has to be somebody that's here tonight.
Yes.
So we have a few folks that were not able to join us. So we'll see if the first one ends up with somebody who's here. So if your name pops up, do unmute and present yourself. So we know that it's somebody in the room. Go ahead, Lorraine. This is to win a She Is Called t-shirt.
Joanne.
Joanne E.
Ebersbach.
Yes.
Oh, not fair, not fair.
I know, the other Joanne, sorry.
About t-shirts.
I'm here.
All right, Joanne. Lorraine will be in touch with you.
Yes, I will.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Very nice. All right, folks. Very fun. We're going to move on now. Leslie will introduce our other speaker, Dr. Rose.
Yes, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Anu Rose. And again, I'm just going to encourage you as she gives her presentation to share comments and questions in the chat. We definitely want to hear from you, and she'll be available for questions after her presentation. But as was mentioned, Dr. Anu Rose is a professor at the Christian Medical College and a member of its Department of Community Health and Development. She also assumed responsibility for the CMC program activities in the Jawani Hills region of South India. And under her leadership and guidance, CMC has launched its landmark Model Villages project, which focuses on the improvement of sanitation and clean water supply, childhood and adult education, economic development, and the improvement in the quality of healthcare for the people there. And Dr. Rose has said she finds great joy in her calling to support the public health and development needs of the indigenous population of the Jawani Hills, and she considers herself an integral part of the community. And so tonight she's going to share with us CMC's vision for the construction of the Emergency Maternal Obstetric and Neonatal Care Hospital to support medical needs of women during childbearing years and those of their newborns. So it's going to really offer us a firsthand perspective of CMC's longstanding health ministry in the Jawani Hills and its ongoing commitment to helping those most vulnerable in the region, which is why supporting them as best we can is so important. So I will introduce you now to Dr. Anu Rose.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Good evening and good afternoon to people joining this program from various parts of the world. I'm going to try and share my screen, and I hope you will tell me whether it is visible. Is it? You can see my screen? Yes, okay, thank you. Yes, yes, okay. So let me first bring you greetings from the Christian Medical College Vellore, from my director, from the head of my department, and my colleagues, and of course from all the people whom I work with, who were quite thrilled when I told them I'm going to be telling a lot of other women about the lives which we all lead here in Jawani Hills. And it is a pleasure for me to share the work my department does here with you. And it is a blessing for me to work in this area and to be part of this institution. So there are some of you who have visited this area. And just for those who are not sure of the geographic location of what we're talking about, so this is a map of India. This is Tamil Nadu, one of the southernmost states of India. And in Tamil Nadu, which is divided into districts, this is Vellore district, where the Chad Hospital and Christian Medical College is located. And this green part out here is Jawani Hills. So it's a large reserve forest. And if it's a reserve forest, it means that there are not many roads into it because the forest department controls building of roads, and they're not too keen on having roads there. Quite right, because of the biodiversity which is available in this place, but not so easy in life for the people who live there. And that is this tribe which we are working on, who have chosen to make their lives there. So I want to start off with taking you through the lives of these three women very quickly. I'm not going to spend too much time because I know we are got some time constraints. But we started this program looking at what inspired Dr. Ida to come here and to set up this really huge institution. And it was the story of three women who died in childbirth, as we all heard about. And I want to tell you that 100 years later, we are facing similar situations of many more events like this, unfortunately. But let me tell you very briefly about these three women. Now, the three women who died when Dr. Ida was in India died because of cultural regions. It was not acceptable for a woman to be seen by a male doctor. And their husbands were not comfortable to seek care for these women with a male doctor. These three women, unfortunately, did seek care. They didn't care that it was a male doctor. They just wanted to have a safe childbirth. But there were other reasons now which are prevalent in this day and age, which prevented them from actually accessing healthcare. So two of the names I have put down. The third one I didn't put down because that is not available in the public domain and it's not fair to publish her name. So Tamila Karthik is the lady whom you've seen who's in this Tamil newspaper. And she was very young, I think around 19 years old when she had her first baby. And what happened was that she lives in an area which is geographically very interior. There is no road which goes to the village. There is a little dirt track. And when she went into labor one night, there was no way, it was in the night, and there was no way to bring her up to the road from where they would have to find some transport to take her to a hospital. Now, she did deliver her baby by herself at home, assisted by her mother or her mother-in-law. And unfortunately, they couldn't get the placenta out and she had a torrential bleed. And by the time they took, by the time day broke at around 5:30 in the morning, the husband went on a bike to the road and he still had to find a place where there was phone coverage because this area doesn't have phone coverage either. So he found a place where there was phone coverage, called for an ambulance. They fixed a spot to bring Tamila, and then he came back and they carried Tamila between him and her mother on a bike. And on the way, she died. And unfortunately, the following day, her little infant, a baby boy, also died. And this is the story of somebody who did not have access because of geographic problems. Neela Nagraj, on the other hand, was a lady who was registered in a primary health center for antenatal care. And when she went with high blood pressures, and when she was referred to another hospital, and she could not go to that hospital because her husband was not there to take her. There were only women in the house, and she died of eclampsia or high blood pressure and seizures during her delivery. And the third person, Mrs. P, was actually registered with us, with the Christian Medical College, and she was getting antenatal care in our mobile clinic. Again, when she went into labor, since we don't have a night clinic in Javadi, we only have a day clinic, she went to the local PHC who again referred her, and she died before she could make it to the hospital. Her child, actually Neela Nagraj's child, is the little boy whom you've seen being carried by his grandmother, and he's being supported by the department, and he's a very cheerful and a healthy little boy who always comes running to the mobile clinic with sweets when the clinic goes to their village. So, and also just for some perspective, a little bit about the Javadi Hills. The Javadi Hills is a part of the Eastern Ghats, and the Eastern Ghats, unlike the Western Ghats, I don't know if you're familiar with this term Ghats, like it's hills, like a range of hills. So the lower part of India, which is V-shaped, has hills on either side. The Western Ghats is made up of a continuous range of hills, whereas the Eastern Ghats is made up of little sections of hills. And as you can imagine, because they're little sections of hills, geographic access becomes difficult, because on a map, you see two villages quite close to each other. But then what the map doesn't show you is that you have to go all the way down the hill and up the hill again to reach this village, which looks quite close on the map. So the people here, ethnically, they are part of a tribe. They are called the Malayalis. The Malay means hills, so the people of the hills. And there are 4 large tribes, out of which the Malayalis are the largest. There are some other smaller tribes like the Irulas. And like I mentioned, geographically, it is a bit inhospitable, this area. And culturally, these people, since they grew up in this reserve forest with not much road access, no TV, no internet, and no phone, except for the very large areas, they sort of grew in isolation. They have a very strong cultural identity, which is very good. They have a lot of good in their culture and also some habits which are not very helpful for their health. But they don't, they're quite different from the people in the plains. Their language itself, the dialect is slightly different from the Tamil which we speak. But for those of us who've been working here for a long time, they're quite understandable. Their way of life is also quite different. Their marriage habits, the food they eat is all quite different. And here are some pictures. So this is a picture of our team. We found that our Jeep, this is the vehicle which we use, cannot travel this road because this little ravine type of a thing here, which happened after the rain, sort of extended into the road. So we had to sort of put some mud and stones on the road before we could actually continue with our work. There are places which no vehicle will go. We have to carry all our stuff on our backs and walk down to the clinic and then walk back, or walk up to the clinic and then walk back. And the way of life here is still the ancient way of life. It is very beautiful, actually, like this place. And life is hard, but it is beautiful there. And this is a picture of one of the villages. Many of the houses are still thatched. The government is promoting these type of roofs because they don't want forest fires and people's houses burning. But culturally, these people have hardly had any fires. But these roofs are actually very hot in summer and very cold in winter. But that's what they are promoting. And to get into this area, there are many rivers which we have to cross. And when the monsoons happen, this whole place is sort of stranded because the rivers overflow and we cannot actually access the people. And 2 weeks back, during the torrential rains, our mobile team got caught in the hills and we had to go on a rescue mission to bring them back, walking through the forest to after abandoning our Jeep in the hills. Health-wise, since as you can imagine, because there's no access because of geographic location and lack of roads, maternal mortality, that is the death of a woman during pregnancy or anytime within the first 6 weeks of after her delivery, is quite high. It's 4 to 5 times higher in the Javadi Hills than anywhere in Tamil Nadu. And Tamil Nadu and Kerala, the southernmost states in India, actually have very good health statistics compared to the north and central part of India. But for this region, our maternal mortality is actually comparable to central or northern India, where maternal mortality is high. Infant mortality is the death of a child within the first year of life. They just don't reach their first birthday. This is also 4 or 5 times higher than what it is in the rest of Tamil Nadu. There are some illnesses here which are quite peculiar to this region. This is a thalassemia belt. Thalassemia is a blood disorder which is inheritable. The people here marry within themselves. They don't marry people outside the hills. So there are some genetic diseases are quite high, and we are trying a lot of measures towards curbing this, like genetic testing before they get married, because, you know, we are a faith-based institution. We don't do abortions. And so while people are adolescents and before they get married, we are trying to find those who have this disease and those who have the trait and advise them about, you know, the risks of marrying somebody else with the same disease. And anemia is very high. Most of it is nutritional anemia because they don't have iron in their food, and also because hookworm infestation is very high here. In Tamil Nadu, in Vellore, for instance, hookworm infestation is 8%. 8% of the population has hookworms. In Javadi, it's 40%, which is nearly half of the people. Malnutrition, again, very, very high, especially among children. And 60% of the children here are stunted, which is an indication of chronic malnutrition. And 63% of the children here are wasted, which is an indication of acute malnutrition. And I have to tell you, the COVID situation made everything worse. Children had access to a midday meal before this in school, and after the schools closed now for we are going on more than 1.5 years, they have not had the midday meal. And economically also, families are collapsing, and therefore food is actually becoming a problem. Infectious diseases here very high. Tuberculosis and other diseases which have been controlled in many other parts of India are actually very, very high here, including things like tetanus. And like many indigenous communities all over the world and in India, like in Orissa and in the Nilgiris, substance abuse, mainly alcohol and marijuana are, it is a problem here, more alcohol than anything else. And some of the social problems I had already mentioned, that access to healthcare is a problem. There are 2 government hospitals here, but then they don't function at night because there are no doctors available. Our own hospital, I'm sorry to say, doesn't function at night because right now we don't have the facilities. That is what we are gearing up towards. Education, most children enroll in school, but children don't actually make it up to high school or higher secondary. Very few make it up to college. And livelihood, these people were all subsistence farmers. That is, they relied on the rainfall for their livelihood. But now with the change in the weather pattern, and you are also experiencing this in your country, have found that they cannot rely on agriculture. So they migrate for work. And migration brings with it its own problems, like lack of access to education, healthcare, and they're not treated treated very well when they migrate to another place to work. And of course, there is a lack of recreational opportunities. There is no electricity in many of the villages, and of course, nothing else. And because of the lack of recreation, young men resort to drinking, which is freely available. That is the one thing which is available all the time. And girls actually get pregnant very, very early in their teens. All this compounded by poverty. When I say poverty, they are poor in currency, in money, but they are very rich in all other aspects of life, like in happiness and cultural aspects, and their own family, their sense of togetherness and community and family, and in happiness. I have learned a lot from these people, and I have learned that you don't really need money to be happy, or material things to be happy, but you need people to be happy. And of course, substance abuse, like I mentioned before. So what CMC wants to do, we would really like to be a witness to the healing ministry of Christ through service in this area. And some of the questions which I've heard other people ask me is, you're a Christian institution, you're a Christian doctor. These people are not Christian, and does this affect your work? And all we're doing here is we are trying to be a witness, like it says in the book of Matthew. We would like to do for God's people, because God is in people. Like our God lives in each person whom we meet. And therefore, we would like to serve him through serving these people. It really doesn't matter to us if they have not yet seen our God, but we would like to show our God to them through our service. So here is a picture of the hospital which we have here. This is my colleague Anu Alexander, and a consultation happening. This is the outside of the clinic. This was the day when our clinic was inaugurated. And here is a picture of a mobile team. And Meenakshi here and Jayapal here are actually tribal people who were educated through our scholarship program and joined back our institution. This is a picture of the mobile services which go on. There are 50 clinic spots and 140 villages we serve every week. And these are the services which I've listed out here, which happen during the clinic: antenatal and postnatal care, chronic disease management, and so on and so forth. I've tried to put as many pictures as possible so that you can understand what life is like there. So our clinics don't have a building or anything. It is usually under a tree, or some on the roadside, sometimes like this picture. And everything happens in this van, from dispensing medicines to examining a pregnant lady on the middle seat with the doctor kneeling on the front seat. Immunization, everything happens in this area. And here is a picture of this lady motivating the mother to vaccinate the child. Completed immunization is only about 30% here. People get some injection, but they don't get all, meaning the children get 1 or 2 injections, but they don't get all the immunization which is recommended for an under 5 child. We have a system of referrals so that a person from Jawadi Hills can actually reach a very sophisticated tertiary care hospital, even though they live in a very, very remote area. So very quickly, here is a picture of our health worker, Poo Mali, weighing a child in the child's house itself using a weighing scale. Here is a picture of a home visit happening, a nurse and a health aide visiting this family. Here is a picture of immunization happening on the street, actually. And here is a picture of the clinic. And this is an orthopedic surgeon who's measuring, who's looking after this patient who had a problem with his hip. This is a picture of Chad Hospital, the outpatient department. And this is a picture of CMC. So you can see the increasing sophistication in care which is provided as you come down the circle. And somebody from a place like this can actually be admitted in a place like this and only pay what they are able to. This is one of the greatest miracles of this institution, that somehow God provides us with money to care for people, whether they have money or not. So if, for example, if a patient has to have a coronary bypass surgery after having had a heart attack, it might cost about 1.5 lakhs. That is 1.5, okay, I don't know it in dollars, but 1.5 lakhs of rupees. And if the patient says, I can pay 5,000, that's all I have with me, they will still be treated for the 5,000. And somehow, like, God helps us to find resources to help this to happen. And it is really, every day is sort of a miracle working in this place. Then also we found that, meaning healthcare alone doesn't work, providing curative services alone doesn't work. we have to find ways in which people have a good livelihood so that their health can be preserved and promoted rather than just giving them medicines and curing their health. So we do a lot of work looking at, providing the social determinants of health. That is like water, clean water, sanitation, livelihood, education. And I've listed some of the things here. And as you know, like we are a medical institution, we really don't know too much about pigs and cows and all, though I do immunize all these animals. I castrate pigs and all this, which I've learned along the way. But then we collaborate with another institution, the Don Bosco Fathers. They are a group of Salesian priests, Catholic organization, which works with us and have been very, very helpful and facilitatory in our work. And the agriculture we are training the people is, I should say, retraining, because we are promoting traditional methods of agriculture and using traditional seeds and crops rather than the genetically modified ones, which turns out very expensive for the people here. We do a lot towards education also, mainly we have 1,330 children registered under us under evening study centers. Just a name for a sort of a gathering of children in the evening with a volunteer who helps them with their daily lessons. These children are all first generation learners, so their parents actually cannot help them with their lessons. And as I said, education, maybe then there is another avenue to talk to you. I'll talk to you about education separately, but then there are no teachers and not enough schools. So children are really discouraged, because some children sort of are in a grade where they don't understand anything happening, and other children are hearing the same thing over and over again. They are understimulated. So school dropout rates are very high. And when they drop out of school, the girls get pregnant very soon. The boys go into substances and lots of other behaviors which are not very conducive for their health or for their development. We have a program where we coach students who perform well to write competitive exams and to get into colleges. And if they do get into colleges, we have a scholarship program to help them. We have some other activities which are very unique, and I would really like to talk to you on some other occasion. Like we have a children's parliament in 3 of the villages where the children govern their own village. And we have clubs like woodwork clubs and quilling and such for the girls. And we have a lot of life skills education, because this area, suicide rates are very, very high. And so lots of other things going on. So what would we like to do? So this is the crux of my presentation, but then it's just the last one slide. But what I'd like to tell you is that we have found that, like it says in the Psalms, unless the Lord builds the house, the workers labor in vain. So we really rely on the Lord to lead us in our ventures. And what we would like to have is a 24-hour hospital, because we found that most of the deaths, most of the the bad events happen in the absence of medical personnel. So we are not there, the government hospital is not there, there's nobody there for these people. And in order for us to have a 24-hour hospital, we found that the road is long and narrow and convoluted, which we are on, because the land to be bought, because it's tribal land, is very difficult to buy, but we are in the process. And I have to tell you, with God's blessings, we have actually progressed quite a bit. And we hope to acquire this land, which we are now renting out and using where the clinic is, to build this maternity hospital. And to build this maternity hospital, the Bello Foundation and other Christian groups, such as yourselves, the Sisterhood, has contributed a lot towards helping us achieve this dream, not for us, but for the people, and to carry on Aunt Ida's legacy of providing care for the people who are not reached. And in the hospital, other than the maternal and childcare services, which we will be focusing on, we will also look at emergencies, chronic diseases, health promotion activities, development activities. It will, of course, have to have accommodation for the staff, because we have to be there in the nights for them. And we will also have a training center for the various training programs which we conduct, the farmers training program, the women's group training program, and for children. We intend to continue all our activities which we've initiated in development and education, because I feel that the next generation of children have to be empowered, so that these people can be empowered and living lives of meaningful lives by themselves, without outside people like us coming and interfering in their lives or helping them. So this is our dream, which you are helping us to achieve with the blessings of the Lord, of course. And I hope that every time I have opportunity to talk to you, I will be able to show you something new, which is happening in this area towards achieving our dream. So our hospital itself is going to be like a stop-gap center. There will be a facility for people to stay. There will be a chapel and a place for quietness and for prayer, and which can be used as a retreat center for other departments in the hospital to come and spend some time in retreat. And this is what we hope to achieve. So I'm going to stop here. And because I think a lot more can be shared by answering specific questions which people might have in their minds. And I'll be really happy to take questions if you have any.
Dr. Rose, thank you so much, Dr. Rose. We're also grateful to you. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our event now. So, but thank you so much for all of this wonderful information. It was sort of, you had to go very quickly and you did so beautifully because you know it so well. So thank you so very much for that. So one thing that I just want to help connect Dr. Rose with those of you who do have questions. Our sister Deepika is the Director of Church Relations at the CMC Valor Foundation, the Valor CMC Foundation here in New York City. And so she would be able to connect you with Dr. Rose for any of those particular questions. So we're just going to take a couple of minutes now to close out, but thank you, Dr. Rose, for this wonderful and very quick presentation. We're so grateful to you and for all of the wonderful work that you're doing. Also, I just want to say that at last count, we had raised $450. So that's great. We doubled it from the first time. So that's more than doubled it, well, more than doubled it, quadrupled it from the first time. And I know that there's others who want to contribute via check. So we'll make sure that we get that information to you. So a few just very quick things as we're signing off for tonight. We have our final t-shirt giveaway in just a minute, but I just want to tell you about, sisters, some beautiful ways for us to stay connected with each other in the new year. So Lorraine is just very quickly going to put up a screen share just so that you can hear about our 6-week study that's coming in January. And we're using a new book that's being published. It's going to be premiered next week called The Sacred Pulse, Holy Rhythms for Overwhelmed Souls. And the author of that is our own Reverend April Feet, who has edited many of our publications. And she's here with us tonight and is just going to very quickly say 30 seconds of greeting to us and encourage us to be part of this. April, Reverend April, can you just greet us quickly?
Sure. Thank you so much for giving me this 30-second window. I just wanted to say, for anyone who is looking for a way to live life in a way that brings wholeness and well-being, especially after the disruptions and the difficulty we've all been through the last couple of years, this 6-week masterclass book study through the Sacred Pulse, I think, will be right up your alley.
Thank you so much, Reverend April. We're so glad that you're able to be here tonight. And we're excited for you and wish you God's blessings as this book gets launched next week. It's brand new, hot off the presses, sisters. Then also we want to tell you about, we have 2 events coming up. We have a trip to Jamaica in February, where we're going to visit the Caribbean Christian Center for the Deaf. That's from February 19th to the 22nd. You can get all that information there. And then also save the date for Sunday, March 26th. 2022 for our annual Women's Stories Day with the Reformed Church Center at New Brunswick Theological Seminary. It will be virtual, and we will be welcoming the Gennady Fellow for this year, missionary Dave Alexander, as he's going to explore 19th century single women missionaries in China. So very connected with our global mission, rekindling sisterships and mission theme. And then one more thing we want to call your attention to is that the Valor Christian Medical College has their 10th annual Dr. Ida S. Scudder Humanitarian Oration tomorrow morning. If you haven't gotten enough of Dr. Scudder's beautiful legacy tonight here on the East Coast in North America, you can tune in tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern for Dr. Premji's presentation. And then there's our Advent Blessings is coming, but first we've got our t-shirt giveaway, and then we have our sister Deepika is going to give us our closing remarks and blessing on our night. So Lorraine, why don't you go ahead and give us one more spin of the wheel. Let's see who's still with us, who's going to win. Sandra, are you still with us, Sandra? Dr. Sandra, is that Dr. Sandra? Yes, she's still here. Can you unmute and just claim your t-shirt, Dr. Wiederhold or Wiederhold?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm used to using Teams, so the unmute was in a different corner of the screen.
Well, I think it's wonderful that one of our medical doctors has won want a t-shirt for She Is Called. That's perfect. So congratulations.
Well, thank you.
All right, sisters. Sister Deepika is going to, oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to pray us out. And then we've got a beautiful a cappella sevenfold amen we're going to listen to. And then Sister Deepika has her final remarks. So will you pray with me? Oh, loving and gracious God, you've gathered us in from the north and the south and the east and the west to rekindle afresh the gift of God, which you have placed within us, O Lord, by your Spirit. We thank you for the beautiful sisters that shared tonight, for the important and life-giving work that's happening in Australia by the hand of Dr. Ramya Rahman, and the ongoing legacy that is happening in Vellore, India, by the hand of Dr. Anu Rose and all of the team that's there, continuing to live into that beautiful legacy created over 100 years ago by our mother missionary, Dr. Ida Sophia Scudder. So as we celebrate her birthday, we celebrate our each other, we celebrate our sistership, Lord. We ask you, Lord, to please activate in us a desire to use our gifts well, to live into our gifts for leadership, to step in boldly to build that resilience that Dr. Rahman told us about and encouraged us to cultivate. And that more than anything, Lord, we link arms with each other, that we link arms with each other as sisters in Christ, and that we encourage one another and build up each other, as in fact we are doing. This is an enterprise of sisters and brothers linking arms and living into our gifts and callings so that the world will know more of you. So those shadowed places will experience your light and your love, the joy, the peace, the hope, and the love that we experience in this Advent season. May it be spread throughout the world and each and every day. Thank you so much for this sweet and sacred time together. In Jesus' name, amen.
The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. And give you peace. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And be gracious. The Lord be gracious, gracious unto you. Amen. Amen.
Our event has come to an end. A big thank you to Dr. Ramya Rahman and Dr. Anu Rose for inspiring us with their words. Thank you, each of you, for your presence with us today. I personally thank Dr. Ida Scudder for starting this hospital because I was born at this hospital. My family members worked there, and I just feel so humble that I was born at a place where God's word is displayed on the walls and nurses sing hymns in the morning. So I just thank you all for rekindling the hope, assurance, and joy that God has placed in our hearts. Please continue to connect to the wonderful opportunities presented starting tomorrow, the 10th Dr. Ida Scudder Humanitarian Oration, which is also found on the landing page of the Vellore CMC Foundation website, vellorecmc.org. And so in the spirit of Advent and women-child wellness, your prayers, your generosity, your support towards the maternity hospital complex, which also comes with a chapel. So it's physical and spiritual healing. All this, to take place in the Javadi Hills, all this has come forth as a source of God's compassion through you to so many. So we are eternally grateful. May God bless you and keep you.